already. I don't know why you need to demand my time and attention constantly, forever, always. So I'm going, Stuart, stop. God damn. This bee keeps trying to get in, and it's going to. I don't know why so many airplanes are just blasting off right now, but they are. Hey friends, welcome to this week's episode of Feminist Fridays. Before you ask, this shirt says the future is accessible, and it was made by my internet pal Annie Elaney. I believe at this point in time it's still available, so I'm gonna link it below in case you want to buy one, and if you want to support disabled creators, because why the fuck not? There's a lot that's been going on in the news this week, and instead of focusing on one specific news story like I did last week, I decided to just sum it all up, but in a feminist way, because I'm a feminist. So let's talk about all the shitty stuff that's happening in the world. Betsy Devos slashed 72 rules protecting students with disabilities because they were unnecessary. According to this article, which will be linked below, I'm going to link all of the articles I'm referencing below, rescission of these documents appears to be a larger administrative pattern developed under Trump's presidency. In February, the president signed an executive order meant to alleviate unnecessary regulatory burdens to supposedly help Americans. The point that has been driven home repeatedly by the Trump administration is that they care about Americans, but their definition of American seems to differ from my own, and probably most people's definitions of American, because it tends to leave out most marginalized people. Women, people of color, LGBTQ+ individuals, immigrants, Muslims, and now disabled people all seem to fit outside of their definition of what a true American is. What has been made abundantly clear since day one is that Trump and all of the other conservatives in Congress who support Trump seem to only really think of Americans as people who were exactly like them, which in this case, vast majority cis, white, straight men. You can argue with that, but statistically that is the reality, and it shows in their public policy. My favorite quote from this article, though, is, "But it is worth remembering that Devos herself doesn't seem to be the most well-versed on the subject of the main disability rules and the documents contained within the legislation." It continues with a quote from Devos's Senate confirmation hearing back in January.
So were you unaware what I just asked you about the IDEA, that it was a federal law?
I may have confused it.
Great. Just the most qualified person for her job ever. Earlier this week, there was a ton of press about singer Sam Smith coming out as gender non-binary. However, Sam Smith never actually called himself non-binary. He's quoted saying, "I am just as much woman as I am man." And then he goes on to describe his gender expression more in depth and talks about how he enjoys wearing women's clothes. A lot of the pushback against these articles labeling Smith with specific gender identifiers is the fact that in the interview he specifically says he's not quite ready to label his gender yet, and he doesn't really know what label feels most comfortable for him. The issue of language here, I think it's a little bit tricky, because I know some people do use non-binary as an umbrella term to describe anyone who doesn't strictly identify as a binary man or a binary woman. However, other people use non-binary in a very specific individual way. Some people might identify as gender fluid, but then feel like non-binary doesn't really ring true to their experience. I think the main message here is that language is very personal and individual, and you should always ask people if they feel comfortable with certain terminology being applied to them. And when they say they don't have a label yet and they're trying to figure it out, kind of give them the space to do that without forcing labels onto them. Speaking of being put in a box, Stuart's gonna jump in a box. But then language is really fucking tricky, because you might want to describe the experience of someone's gender not being binary, but then find that non-binary is a label that they're not necessarily comfortable with. This is like not a statement, I just have questions, basically. So my question to you all is, do you consider non-binary to be kind of a catch-all umbrella term that describes anyone who isn't binary? Or do you think there's a better term for it for people who might not use a label yet, but they're not necessarily cis and their gender isn't necessarily conforming. You could use trans, but I'm wary of applying that label to people who might not feel that way, because I know there are also gender non-conforming people who don't consider themselves trans. So it's very subjective. For some happy related news, California just passed a law legally recognizing non-binary as a third gender option, which is fucking awesome. My boy Jerry Brown killing it again with his legislation. Also, this is not me co-signing everything that Jerry Brown has ever done, by the way, because I'm not that clued into everything Jerry Brown does, to be honest. But he has passed some really great laws, such as the Yes Means Yes law, and also the law semi-recently to make California a sanctuary state. So I'm for it. I'm very pro a lot of the shit that Jerry Brown does. Since last week when I made my video on it, there have been exponentially more reports about harassment and sexual assault in Hollywood. This unfortunately is not surprising. I talked about this in my last video, so I'm not gonna go into too much detail here, but maybe in the future I'll talk about it more in depth with the new information that is coming out and some of the nuances of it. 3 days ago, there was a bomb hoax at a Planned Parenthood in Whittier, California. A bomb squad was deployed to destroy a suspicious-looking pipe with wires sticking out of it, which turned out to not be a bomb, thankfully. I do want to point out that this is not an irregular occurrence at Planned Parenthoods or just any health clinic that offers abortion services. According to the National Abortion Federation, violence towards clinics that offer abortion is ongoing, and in 2016, vandalism, picketing, obstruction, invasion, trespassing, burglary, stalking, assault, and battery, and bomb threats have increased. They also report that the percentage of clinics reporting the most severe types of anti-abortion violence and threats has dramatically increased between 2014 and 2016. Even when bomb threats like this turn out to be a hoax, it still contributes to anxiety and fear over safety for folks who need to access these services. And that's kind of the point. It's already incredibly difficult to make the decision to get an abortion when there's still so much shame and stigma placed on it. Not only that, abortion is already really inaccessible to a lot of people in certain states. I talk about this more in depth in my Choice Feminism video that will be coming out soon, at some point. So on top of that, having to deal with protesters harassing, stalking, and threatening you because you're making a decision about your own body is incredibly demoralizing. Like, the decision to get an abortion is already incredibly difficult for a lot of cis women as well as trans people, and not a decision that most people take lightly. Anyway, that was me summing up the news for this week. I've been thinking about playing around with the format of Feminist Fridays, so let me know what your thoughts are on this. Do you prefer a video like last week where I only talk about one news story and tie it into larger feminist issues and discourse? Or did you prefer this week's video where I talked about things more briefly, but I was able to cover more topics? Let me know. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to this channel, as well as click the notification bell to make sure that you always get my videos. Also, this is completely voluntary, but if you would like to help support my work, then please consider donating to my Patreon page, which will be linked below. And there are a lot of cool perks, such as secret vlogs, a feminist newsletter, and even a monthly book club, so definitely check it out.